This year, I am focused on saving and investing, but I still want to do things like travel. NerdWallet lets you compare top travel credit cards side by side to maximize your spending, some even offering 10 times points on your spending, which means you could end up with a free flight or maybe a better hotel room.
So what could future you do with smarter financial decisions? Compare and find smarter credit cards, savings accounts, and more today at nerdwallet.com. NerdWallet, finance smarter. Reminder, credit is subject to lender approval and terms apply.
If you've ever been in the market for a new home, you know home shopping can be a lot. There's so much you don't know and so much you need to know. What are the neighborhoods like? What are the schools like? Who is the agent who knows the listing or neighborhood best? And why can't all this information just be in one place?
Well, now it is on Homes.com. They've got everything you need to know about the listing itself, but even better. They've got comprehensive neighborhood guides and detailed reports about local schools. And their agent directory helps you see the agent's current listings and sales history. Homes.com collaboration tools make it easier than ever to share all this information with your family. It's a whole cul-de-sac of home shopping information all at your fingertips. Homes.com. We've done your homework. Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about cutting-edge science, the wisdom of the ages, lessons from pop culture, and our own experiences about how to be happier. This week, we'll talk about why it's a good idea to avoid avoidance and why planned maintenance works better than unplanned maintenance. Plus, we'll have a lot of suggestions of books about how the world works. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the five senses, and human nature. I'm in my little home office in New York City, and joining me today from LA is my sister Elizabeth Kraft. And Elizabeth, we often discuss how we're trying to avoid avoidance.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And yes, Gretch, I have been known to avoid in my life.
We've all done it. Before we jump in, a few updates.
Gretch, this comes from Elizabeth. She says, as part of my writing 2 to 4 minutes in 2024, I started the 5 Senses Journal and have also kept up my 1 sentence journal. I think Gretchen is using the same 2 inspirations.
Yeah, that's true.
The 5 Senses Journal has been a new way of journaling for me, and I find myself noting sensory experiences throughout the day to pull onto the pages of my journal. It has added a finer focus to how I perceive daily life, and it's been delightful to walk through the world this way. We recently went on spring break with our son to Paris and Amsterdam, and I took my 5 Senses journal with me. It was a great way to document our travels, and now when I go back and read my entries from that trip, the memories are incredibly clear and palpable. It's just a deeper level of memory. Things like the texture of the train seats on the train from Paris to Amsterdam, or the surface of the canal boat we took through Amsterdam, or the taste of the surprise bottle of champagne in our final dinner in Paris. Take me right back to those moments. Perhaps because the memories are embodied, they are stronger and deeper. I will journal this way on every trip I have from here on out.
Well, I loved hearing this because this is exactly how it works for me and exactly how I hope other people would use it. Because there's things that you don't, at least for me, that I don't notice unless I'm trying to notice them. Like I love the thing about the texture of train seats.
Yes.
Because that's the kind of thing that later is such a fun memory to have, but it's hard to notice it in the moment. At least it is for me.
Yeah, and it brings back so much. I think that's what's cool. Like just that one detail then brings all these other details. But I mean, this was sort of why you wrote the entire book.
It is. Yes.
So it is all encompassed in this.
Yes. So that was very exciting. If anybody wants to check it out, you can go to happiercast.com/shop and take a look and see. It's interesting because I thought of it like a journal, but maybe you would use it as a travel journal and not do it in your everyday, but just when you're traveling. Anyway, people are so creative in how they think of using tools beyond what's suggested. It's always fascinating to me. And one more thing to mention is that we're going to do an Ask Us Anything episode coming up. And so send in your questions. It can be about happiness, the five senses, human nature, Hollywood, careers,
Kansas City.
yes, how Elizabeth and I got along as kids, what you should order at Winstead's, anything. Send in any question you have, and we will put those together. We haven't done one of those in a while, Elizabeth, and they're so fun.
Yes. Send your questions.
So now for the try this at home for this week. And our suggestion is to avoid avoidance. Research shows that anxiety comes up for us in many ways. And one of the ways it shows up is avoidance.
And so what exactly is avoidance?
Okay, so avoidance is just what it sounds like. It's a coping strategy where we make efforts with our thoughts, our feelings, our actions to deny, minimize, or postpone dealing with something that is a stressful demand or a painful emotion. We avoid those stressors rather than deal with them because we don't want to deal with them.
Right. And the idea is it can feel easier to avoid a situation that makes you feel sad or worried or fearful. But in the end, it often makes things worse.
Yes.
It is not helping you deal with whatever is stressing you out. I think we've all experienced this many, many times.
Yes, because it comes up all the time. Now, before we get into this conversation, of course, if a person's challenge with this issue is really hurting their life, if it's really a problem, it's time to get professional help and really get into it. But this, like you say, this is something that most of us do more than we find useful in our everyday life. So this is sort of when it's an ordinary problem. So if it's becoming an exceptional problem, get help. This is for the ordinary person because the fact is avoidance is not a good coping strategy. Often things, they either don't get better, but they often get worse. So that by avoiding it, you're actually making a problem more stressful, more difficult, more challenging because you're not dealing with it.
Yeah. As you always say, Gretch, the stewing is worse than the doing.
Yes, I love that proverb. Yes, love the fluency heuristic where things rhyme. And we've talked about this. It's come up in a lot of situations. For us, Elizabeth, I mean, one of the ways you and I really suffer from avoidance is airline tickets and travel generally. Both of us do not. Some people love it. I so envy the people who love to get on there and look at options and think about it. I feel like whatever I pick, I'm going to make the wrong decision and get stuck in an airport for 6 hours. So I try to avoid that or like choosing dates. And it just gets worse. You have fewer options and the prices rise.
Yes. I mean, it can make a difference in thousands of dollars.
Yes, it can.
That has finally gotten me, I think, to try to get my tickets in a timely manner.
You really led the way on this, Elizabeth, I have to say, because last couple of years you've been like, I got my tickets to Kansas City for Christmas. And it's like September. I'm thinking, okay, she's done it. I guess the clock is ticking. But yeah, we've learned it the hard way.
And then a big one, Gretchen, and this can have major consequences, is health issues.
Yes.
So many of us have some concern and we don't want to go to the doctor, but of course, that's the absolute wrong thing to do.
Avoiding a health issue. And then there's things that are like planning a child's summer, where it's going to be complicated and many, many stages and lots of probably discussions, and it just feels so complicated. And you think, oh gosh, I'll just do it tomorrow. But again, it often gets harder because maybe you don't get the program that was the first choice, or you don't get the dates you want, or other kinds of decisions can't be made because it's sort of a chicken and the egg. So it's just like deal with it as soon as you can is often better.
Yes. And then another thing that many of us avoid is having a hard conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So whether that be with a coworker, a friend, a kid, a parent, again, that's a conversation that is likely not going to get easier. It may get harder, but it definitely won't get easier, and it's going to weigh you down. And that's the kind of thing that can keep you up at night.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a huge one. And then I think the final one is not wanting to check your bank account, not wanting to look at your bills, and just like having a pile and just not thinking about it. And again, things can get worse because you're just avoiding it. And so the stress will rise and rise because your situation is getting worse, so that when you are forced to deal with it, it can get much worse. I mean, kind of the thing in my family, which stands for the idea of avoidance, kind of in our family lore, is when Eliza was in, I think, 6th grade, they had this thing called the electricity project. And then by the time Eleanor came along, they had really refined this project so it was much less stressful. But poor Eliza was when the school was just introducing it and they hadn't worked out all the kinks. It required all this stuff, and she avoided it, and we didn't even know about it. And then one day, it's like, oh, I have to have this project done by Monday. And I looked at the assignment sheet, and it's like, these were not, you didn't have to go buy batteries from a drugstore. These were like complicated electricity items that we had to like go to a special store to get. So, of course, I was like flustered by this, and she didn't have any time, and then she didn't have any time to talk to her teacher before it was due, and to go back and forth. And so the whole thing was just sort of nightmarish. And she had a really bad result, frankly. And so now it's always like, this feels like the electricity project to me. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, we remember the electricity project.
Gretch, that brings to mind of my leaf collection project of 4th grade, which was similarly horrendous for everyone involved, especially mom and dad.
Yeah. Well, okay, wait, side note, maybe one of the things we should say is one of my favorite proverbs of the professions, but like a traditional proverb is a stumble may prevent a fall. And this often comes up with parenting, which is like a small mistake in 6th grade might prevent you from making a major fall in 11th grade. And so sometimes maybe as a parent, we have to say like, I'm kind of thinking that the leaf collection is not getting dealt with. You want to let them experience why avoidance isn't a good coping strategy.
Yes.
Okay, but what do we do if we find that we're avoiding? Okay, like what are the steps that we can take if we're like, okay, this is happening, or this is something that I'm prone to? What do I do to avoid avoidance?
So first step is to identify the problem, realize that you're avoiding something.
Yes.
Identify the task you're avoiding.
This is easier said than done.
Right, because sometimes you think, oh, it's not the right time to get a plane ticket. It's not that I'm avoiding it. It's that it's not the right time yet because I need all this information.
Or with things that are really, really stressful and difficult, you don't even allow them to come into your mind. You're just avoiding it so much that it's just like a little flicker in your awareness. So I think part of it is really to try to allow yourself to experience that there is something that you want to avoid. And then it can be helpful to decide, like, well, why are you avoiding it? Identify the reasons, because we talk about if you identify the problem, that can often help you spot solutions or make things easier. And Elizabeth, for this, I think about you wanting to avoid these social situations and saying, well, it's not the socialness that I'm wanting to avoid, it's the driving part of it. And so once you identify the problem and the reason that you're avoiding a test, you might spot a solution that is not what you think it is. And then you might also say, well, do I have a fear that I haven't acknowledged or a negative belief about myself? So maybe like you're avoiding writing a wedding toast. But then when you really think about it, you're like, well, I have this identity of myself as, I'm terrible at public speaking. And so it's like, okay, well, grapple with that. Are you terrible at public speaking? Like that's an issue to be dealt with, which if you're just avoiding the whole thing, you might not realize that is at the core of the issue.
Also, you want to start small and keep it manageable. So put it on the to-do list for tomorrow, then start with the least scary task, like finding a phone number or starting a document and filling in the easy parts.
Yes.
This is something that I do a lot.
Looking up a phone number counts as step one, 100%. And then once you've started, you want to keep up the momentum. So do one thing and then say, okay, then I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to do another thing. Maybe it's one thing every day. I mean, as long as you're moving forward, you're making progress, and that is better than avoiding. So take it very small steps if you need to, but if you've got that momentum going, keep it up.
And then, of course, Gretch, we always talk about scheduling. If it's on the schedule for both of us, then it is much more likely to happen.
Yeah, this is a good thing. Think about your tendency, because we won't get into all the 4 tendencies, but if you don't know your tendency, you can take the quiz and learn about it at GretchenRubin.com/quiz. But if you know that you're an obliger, maybe you have an accountability partner for the thing that to make sure that you engage with whatever you're trying to do. And if you were a rebel, you might challenge yourself. Like, I think that I'm terrible at public speaking, but I'm going to get a great wedding toast. But for me, if it's something that I'm avoiding, I literally will put it on my calendar, call the dentist to schedule an appointment. And for a questioner, it might be thinking about, the efficiencies that you'll lose, the money that you'll lose, the time you'll lose, the reasons why it makes sense to do it now rather than later.
And then you also want to think about your future self and the downsides of delaying, how ultimately you're giving yourself more anxiety, higher stakes, more expenses. A problem can grow and become an emergency. I mean, that's true with like getting your passport renewed.
Yes.
Again, with going to the doctor.
Yeah.
It can really blow up in your face.
And here are two things that can make it easier. First, ask for help. I don't know why this is so hard. But a lot of times I avoid something because I'm sort of paralyzed because I don't know what to do. But because I'm avoiding it, I don't think like, well, is there somebody that I could ask for help? Is there somebody who would have advice or would help me get started? Because I really just don't know what to do. So ask for help. And then the other thing is give yourself healthy treats. Take steps to help yourself feel energized and cared for. If you're dealing with something that is really difficult and stressing you out, give yourself that gold star for moving forward. Load yourself with healthy treats to recognize this is really difficult and painful. I do not want to do it, but I am going to do it. And so I'm going to try to help myself.
Gretchen, you really want to examine your avoidance because it can be important information. Negative emotion can be useful. So are you avoiding buying a plane ticket because it's a pain or because you really don't want to go in a legitimate way?
Yes. So you want to use it as a helpful signal. But here's the thing, Elizabeth. Sometimes when we avoid something, it's because we're hoping that in the end, whatever we're avoiding won't be necessary, or it'll be overtaken by events, or somebody else will deal with it or something.
And the thing is, Gretch, that happens just often enough to keep it as a tantalizing option.
Yes.
Sometimes things go away.
Yes, I know, but not often.
Yes, not often, but it does happen.
Yeah. Well, anyway, avoid avoidance for the most part. Let us know if you do try this at home, how avoiding avoidance works for you. Have you found any great strategies or resources for dealing with it? Something that comes up a lot in everyday life. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes. Go to happiercast.com/481 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, we have a very practical happiness hack. But first, this break.
The weather's getting warmer, so it's time to say goodbye to jackets and sweaters and hello to shorts and tees. I wanted to update my wardrobe without spending a fortune, and luckily I found Quince. Elizabeth, I got the flow knit wide leg pant. It's very light. It's perfect for the summer. It packs very easily. I recently went on a trip with my family, and I took it with me, and they were just the thing to wear on a really hot day where I wanted to be covered up, but I wanted something that looked great and also was very comfortable.
And the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Get warm weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
Now it's time for a happiness hack. And Elizabeth, I love this hack. It is so simple and so applicable to so many things.
Yes, Gretchen. It comes from Myrna, who says, parenting hack. I am a mother of 2 girls, a 2 and a 4-year-old, and work full-time as a nurse, so time is of the essence. One hack that helps me serve their meals faster is to use scissors. Instead of using a fork and knife to cut up their chicken, steak, broccoli, to remove the stem, etc. into small pieces, I use kitchen scissors and have found that I complete the task so much faster. It brought me so much joy when I came up with it, wanted to share with listeners.
Okay, this is something you don't have to use just with children. I use it myself. And it's so much faster.
Yeah, and I love that a nurse suggested this, Gretchen.
Yes.
It feels like something a nurse would figure out, this very practical thing.
What about like using a tool?
Yes,
absolutely. So that's a great one.
Yes,
wonderful.
Thank you, Myrna.
And now for a 4 tendencies tip. And this comes from an idea in the business world. Okay, so one thing that they talk about is planned downtime versus unplanned downtime, or planned maintenance versus unplanned maintenance. And so there's a difference between what is the cost to your factory if you have planned downtime versus unplanned downtime, because you could have a plant that runs on what's called run to fail maintenance plan, which is they just run it and they only repair it if something gets broken. But what the research shows, and I think that we all would suspect that this would be true, is that usually you're better off staying ahead of that and like planning your downtime, planning your maintenance, and not just waiting for something to break or stop working.
Yes, this can apply to many areas of our lives. As we were just discussing earlier, if something becomes an emergency, then it can cost a lot more. It can be a huge inconvenience. It can mess up your schedule.
Yeah.
One area, Gretch, where this applies for me is with my car.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you don't have to
Yes.
deal with cars that often. But of
No, I
course,
don't.
I drive here in LA all the time. And you need to do maintenance on your car. And if you don't, eventually something bad will
Yes.
happen. And it will no doubt happen at the
Yes.
worst possible
Yes.
time and
Yes.
cost the most
Yes.
money. Now, in this conversation that we're having at the moment, I must confess that my car is currently 85 days past due for its service.
Okay.
Every time I turn it on, it informs me that another day has passed. So this is going to inspire me for planned maintenance so I don't end up on the side of the highway with unplanned maintenance.
Because that's the thing, is inevitably it ends up at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So planning for downtime can make life smoother overall. Now, it's tempting to always postpone it because you're like, well, I don't need to do
Right.
it. But if you can do it when you're planning a break or, time, what you need for your own maintenance, your own downtime, that can make your life smoother overall. And the reason that this is a 4 tendencies tip, which is that if you kind of agree intellectually with the idea that the planned maintenance would be a better approach, you may still struggle to do it because it does feel disruptive and non-productive because you're like, I can't drive while my car is in the shop or whatever. It's just easier to sort of keep charging forward and not making space for that. But by thinking about your tendency, you can figure out ways to make that time for planned maintenance. And, a lot of this might just be like relaxing for yourself, like taking a vacation, right? You need that for your planned maintenance. But for some people, it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to take a week off from work. They just keep working and working and working. So how do you get yourself to take the planned maintenance? That's where your tendency can come into play.
So what are the ways the different tendencies should think about it?
Okay, so for obligers, it might be helpful for you to think about it in terms of meeting the expectations of others. Like if I let myself get burned out, if I let myself get exhausted and drained so that I get sick, then I'm not going to be able to keep up with my responsibilities. People are depending on me. I'm going to let people down. I might not be able to show up at an important occasion because I throw out my back again because I haven't been doing my physical therapy, because I haven't been taking the time from, my busy schedule. So think about that outer accountability. And where questioners, it might be much more like, well, it's more efficient. There's going to be ultimate cost savings. If I change this air filter now, it'll cost me less than if I don't even know what I'm talking about. So I'm just making this up. But, sometimes with things like if you use them to the last minute, it ends up being a big problem or you cause. So questioners, it's why would I do this? Why does this make sense? Why am I customizing this for me? What are the efficiency gains?
And then for upholders, sometimes to keep going, you need to allow yourselves to stop.
Yeah, that's one of my secrets of adulthood, and that's very helpful for upholders because it's like if you're going to keep up that pace that upholders tend to like, you need to take a break. But this is probably not such an issue for rebels because rebels are sort of like, if I need that time, if I need that self-maintenance, if I need to take care of something, if I want to, I will. And if I don't want to, I won't. And then I'll deal with the consequences. It's like, okay. So that works too, as long as you accept the consequences.
And Gretch, you touched on this, but really it is helpful in terms of health to think about planned maintenance and unplanned maintenance. And we were mentioning this earlier, going to the doctor every year, as much as it's a pain, it can really help you in many ways.
And sometimes, it can feel like I don't want to spend the money or something, but sometimes you spend money to save money. Like, do you take care of your teeth regularly or do you wait for some kind of expensive, unplanned dental emergency? It's kind of the stitch in time saves 9.
Yes.
And same thing with exercise. Doing the maintenance of exercise ultimately saves you money in terms of so many health consequences. So you could think of your exercise routine as your planned maintenance. Just like a factory has its planned maintenance, you have your planned maintenance. It's fun.
Yes. And Gretchen, I will say, being someone who has to go to the doctor all the time, I find it helpful to have like a season of going to the doctor, which is kind of like a planned maintenance. Like
Well,
in this month, I'm hitting every single doctor.
but you're treating yourself like a factory. That,
Yeah.
like treat yourself
Yeah.
like a toddler, treat
Yeah.
yourself like a teenager.
Okay. Treat yourself like a factory. We have
Yes.
another one coming up. All
There
right.
you go. It's the
That'll be a
month
try
of
this at
plan.
home.
Well, then maybe that's when you do your car too.
Yeah. So plan maintenance, make it happen.
Yes. Yeah. Well, one of the things you might do for your self-maintenance, your planned maintenance, is to read a book that you enjoy. And Elizabeth, we were inundated with suggestions after our discussion in episode 478, where we had the try this at home suggestion to make life more interesting by reading a book that sheds light on how things work. And it's so funny because I thought that you and I kind of had this idiosyncratic thing where we really enjoyed these books. I didn't know that this was like a thing. Well, like so often, it turns out that you feel like you're sort of the only one interested in something or doing something. It turns out, oh no, this is something that many people share.
Yes. So we will run through some of the suggestions we got. Kathy says, as an engineer, this book spoke to me. The Evolution of Useful Things, how everyday artifacts from forks and pins to paper clips and zippers came to be as they are, by Henry Petrosky.
I bought that book to give to Eliza because it sounded like she would love it. Corey said, one of my most recommended books ever, and I always feel weird recommending it because it sounds kind of lame, but it is so, so good, is called Upstairs at the White House, My Life with the First Ladies by J.B. West. The author was the chief usher at the White House for decades, and it's so fascinating to read about the different presidents and first ladies he got to know. You will love it.
That sounds good. Margaret said, I recently read Maggie Bullock's book, The Kingdom of Prep, the inside story of the rise and near fall of J. Crew. The book chronicles the company's beginnings up to, I believe, the 2020s. It is an easy read and a very interesting look into this iconic brand. Gretch, I was just talking the other day about Jenna Lyons on More Happier. I think this is one I 100% need to read.
Yeah. Cindy suggests two books that both sound fascinating by Rose George. One is 9 Pints, A Journey Through the Money, Medicine, and Mysteries of Blood, and The Big Necessity, The Unmentionable World of Human Waste and Why It Matters. They both sound good.
Kelsey says, I have a great book recommendation for you since you love to learn about how things work. Me too, and have not read the books you mentioned, so adding those to my to-be read. I want to share one of my favorites, Gut, the inside story of our body's most underrated organ by Julia Enders.
Fascinating. Carol said, I'd like to recommend The Song Machine, Inside the Hit Factory by John Seabrook. It tends to take a lot for me to get interested in pop music, and when my daughter was in high school, as I chauffeured her about, she would listen to popular music. This book came up and something about it piqued my interest. For a long while after that, I would drive my daughter crazy by pointing out the construction of the songs on the radio.
Marcy says, Dog is Love, Why and How Your Dog Loves You by Clive Wynne is one of my newest favorites. And If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor by Bruce Campbell is an old favorite. I love learning about cutting-edge canine genetics and the human-dog relationship in Dog is Love, and how Bruce Campbell and his hometown friends turned a childhood 8mm hobby into careers in If Chins Could Kill. I love that title.
Yeah.
There are also podcasts that uncovered the design of everyday life, as well as my very favorite, which is 99% Invisible by Roman Mars. Each episode provides the story of something we all take for granted or how a design challenge was overcome.
That's a great podcast. Stephanie said, one book I recommend to everyone is How Buildings Learn, What Happens After They're Built by Stuart Brand. The cover says it all, a print of two identical homes side by side from 1850s and a recent photo where they look so different. I have read this book. Fascinating.
Stephanie says, here are a few of my favorites. The Library Book by Susan Orlean, Anything by Mary Roach, Bonk, Stiff, Spook. Oh, I know Sarah likes Stiff.
I love Mary Roach. I read everything she writes.
And The Way Things Work by David Macaulay.
Yeah, that's a huge classic. This is another book that I bought for Eliza, and I want to borrow it because it sounds so good. Angela suggests Meet Me by the Fountain, An Inside History of the Mall by Alexandra Lang.
Nikki says, I'm writing to recommend Paved Paradise, How Parking Explains the World by Henry Graybar. It sheds light on how parking policy is created, not very well it turns out, and what we're willing to do to store our cars.
Interesting. Jackie says, the best books that explain how things work are written by Bill Bryson. My favorite of all time is titled At Home, A Short History of Private Life. He goes room by room through a house to explain the history and origins of how we live. And then also many people suggested Bill Bryson's book, The Body, A Guide for Occupants. I've read both those books. I love Bill Bryson.
These titles are amazing.
I know.
Barb said, you must read An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Yong, especially because of your interest in senses.
I have read An Immense World. It is so good. Suzanne said, you may have already read this one, but Anthony Bourdain wrote the book Kitchen Confidential, Adventures in the Culinary Underbelly. This is a behind-the-scenes read at how a chef runs a restaurant and why you don't want to order fish on Monday. I haven't read that. Have you read that, Alyssa?
I have, and there was also a show based on it.
Yes.
That
that's
friends of mine worked on.
That's right.
Lori has a podcast recommendation. She said, on my morning walk, I listened to a podcast from the U.S. Postal Service called Mailin' It. The January 23rd episode chronicles the journey of new stamps. I thought it was fascinating and thought you might enjoy knowing how that works, even though it isn't a book.
Love a podcast. Jenna says, this book is absolutely fascinating and I believe has very important information for those of us who wear clothes to know. Unraveled, The Life and Death of a Garment by Maxine Bettit.
And this comes from Janice. Here's another podcast recommendation, The Economics of Everyday Things. They are 15 to 20-minute episodes on niche industries like Foley artists or specific items like hotel soaps. Great for quick drives and very interesting insights.
I really like that podcast. I listened to that. And then finally, Alessandra recommends two books, Hot Box, Inside Catering, The Food World's Riskiest Business by Matt Lee. After reading this, I will never go to an event or party and not appreciate the MacGyver-type effort it may have taken for me to enjoy a hot hors d'oeuvre or entree. And then The Residence, Inside the Private World of the White House by Kate Anderson Brower. A fascinating look at the everyday inside workings of the White House from the people who work there. Oh, people are interested in the White House.
Yes. All of these sound great, Gretchen.
Yes, my to-be-read list is now dangerously longer than it was before.
Yes. Coming up, Gretchen gives herself a demerit that is vague but annoying to her. But first, this break.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and free. And, you know, Elizabeth, I now work with a team, and hiring the right people is so important. It's maybe the most important thing. And LinkedIn makes the process of identifying and hiring people easy and intuitive. I know that when I've been hiring for my team, it's hard to find quality candidates to interview. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn.
Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Gretchen. That's linkedin.com/Gretchen to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, big and small, and when we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe place to get things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. Gretchen, when I started my career, therapy really helped me work through all of my stresses so that I was able to concentrate at work and do a good job.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/GretchenRubin today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gretchen Rubin. We're so excited to introduce you to Great Jones. Great Jones makes high-quality, thoughtfully designed cookware that's so stunning you won't want to put it away. They have everything from Dutch ovens to ceramic dishes to non-stick sheet pans. They've got everything you want. I have the Saucy, which is a terrific saucepan. It has curved sides. It has a pouring spout. It has a lid. And it looks so elegant. It's really a pleasure just to look at it on the counter, even before we're using it.
Yes, I love all the colors.
Yeah.
They make stunning gifts that are actually useful. Weddings, housewarming parties, birthdays. It's the perfect gift for the foodie in your life. So upgrade your kitchen and replace those old rusted hand-me-downs with bold, beautiful, long-lasting pieces from Great Jones. Get started today at greatjones.com and get an extra 15% off your first order with promo code HAPPIER. That's greatjones.com, promo code HAPPIER. All right, Gretch, we are back with demerits and gold stars, and this week you are up with a happiness demerit.
Yes, and it is kind of vague, but I've been thinking about it. Like, I've been very indecisive lately, and I don't know why, and it's just kind of making me bonkers. And I don't know if this is actually a demerit, or is it just something I want to pay attention to? Here's just a silly example. So, I had the podcaster gathering, which was something on my 24 for 24 list, and I printed out the list. And then I have the list just sitting out on like a random surface. And I keep thinking to myself, what should I do with it? Should I toss it because I have it in my computer? Do I keep it? Is it kind of a memento? Is it a useful thing? Should I file it? If I file it, where does it go? What do I do with it? I'm like, why is this so hard?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. The stakes are so low. And like somehow I'm just like, it's been there for 6 weeks. I just feel like there's a lot of that. And so I don't really know what to make of it.
It's more of a happiness stumbling block, maybe, than a demerit.
Yes, I think that is right. Okay, good. Better classification will help with clarifying my thinking. So stay tuned. I should just flip a coin, right? For something that really doesn't matter, flip a coin and do it that way. So maybe I'll do that.
That's a good idea. I think you can throw away the list, my 2 cents.
Okay.
Because you have it on your computer.
I have it on my computer. You're right. So that one's done. Now I have like 40 others. So I'll start working those out. But Elizabeth, what is our gold star? Take us up.
Well, Gretchen, I mentioned for my planned maintenance, I'm doing my season of doctors right now.
Yes.
I only have one more doctor that I need to see.
Yay.
So I just want to give a gold star to all of my doctors who are very attentive. I never feel like they're rushing me. I really feel like they care. So gold star to all those people taking care of me and my type 1 diabetes.
Oh, yes, gold star to all those healthcare professionals out there. The resource for this week, well, earlier I mentioned the 4 tendencies quiz, but I have another quiz. And if you are interested in your 5 senses, maybe you're thinking about having a 5 senses journal, and you're wondering about the question of what is your most neglected sense, you can take my quiz. This is a super fun quiz. Just go to happiercast.com/quiz, and it will tell you your most neglected sense, which for many people is a very interesting thing to learn.
Yeah, Gretch, you and I both have the same most neglected sense, which is taste.
Yes. And what are we reading? Elizabeth, what are you reading?
I am reading The Manor House by Gilly Macmillan.
And I am reading Molly, a memoir of a marriage cut short and the secrets left behind by Blake Butler. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Try to avoid avoidance. Let us know if you avoided avoidance and how you did it and how it worked for you.
Thanks to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft. Our email address is podcast@GretchenRubin.com.
If you like the show, tell someone you know.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Elizabeth, I love this idea of planned maintenance and sort of a design your year idea. We have the trifecta as part of a design your year. I like this idea of planned maintenance.
Oh,
What are you going to do for
yes.
planned maintenance? Sort of interesting.
That is a great idea.
It's so funny how just giving something a snappy name makes it feel easier to do.
I know. Well, and also it makes it a whole like world of a thing. Like
Yes.
it's just so massive and we never even thought about it before.
Aye, indeed. From the Onward Project.